The world's most famous billionaire, Robert Kiyosaki, just shocked the world by saying that you could retire with as little as 0.01 Bitcoin. That's right, that's 1% of a Bitcoin. And this is one of the very rare occasions that today's thumbnail is 100% accurate. Because if we jump on over to Robert's official Twitter account, you can see he says even 0.01 of a Bitcoin is going to be priceless in 2 years. And that is because there is only 1 to 2 million Bitcoin left to be mined. And the Bitcoin price is about to enter the banana zone. So today we're going to be explaining how you can retire with 0.01 Bitcoin. And we're going to be analyzing whether Robert's claim is true or not. And we're going to be doing that with my favorite Bitcoin retirement calculator. So if we zoom into this, we can see we're going to be assuming and asking this calculator when we can retire with 0.01 Bitcoin. So this is our stack size. Now we want to retire with $100,000, okay? Yes, we're going to run a few different simulations. I get it. You can retire with $100,000 in some countries, but in other countries, you might need a little bit more than $100,000. And don't get me wrong, you could come party with me in Peru and Colombia, potentially even retire with $25,000. We're going to get to the ultra bullish, simulation or maths equation here in a moment. But I want to start with $100,000. This covers most people around the world. How much Bitcoin do we need to spend $100,000 of that Bitcoin every year? The next assumption we want to have a look at is having a look at the supply increase of the money supply. So this calculator here is going to assume that the money supply increases by 12% per year. Now, if you scroll down, there's some maths behind why we're going to use that 12% number. If we have a look here, they have the table. This has the maths, it has all of the data. You can see over the past 4 years and 5 years, the money supply globally has been increasing by that magic number. That is 12%. Take a look at that. That's on the right-hand side of the table. So we're going to use that number. We're going to use the 12% fiat debasement number. And the very last assumption we need to make is we need to ask ourselves, how much is Bitcoin going to continue appreciating? Everybody talks about Bitcoin's CAGR. A lot of people are very confident in assuming that Bitcoin's CAGR will continue decreasing forever. We're going to run a couple of different simulations here, but I want to show you guys what Bitcoin's CAGR is before we start with those different assumptions. So again, this right here is one of my favorite videos in the Bitcoin space. This looks at Bitcoin's CAGR over time. So in the white line, that is the price of Bitcoin. And you can see between 2009 and 2015, Bitcoin's CAGR was 800% a year. And you can see even up until 2017, Bitcoin's CAGR, it was like 600 to 700%. That means on average, Bitcoin is increasing by 600 to 700% every single year. This obviously accounts for all of the volatility and these massive 80% corrections. As you can see, now we're into 2017. Bitcoin's CAGR is around 200%, 300%. So again, it's only really since 2018 that Bitcoin's CAGR has been decreasing precipitously. So today, when we get the finalized numbers, you guys are going to see that Bitcoin's CAGR over the past 8 years, it's about 77%. Now, obviously, if you zoom out a little bit more, it's obviously a little bit more bullish. You guys can see in 2022, Bitcoin's 12-year CAGR, that was up around 150, and it was near 200% for a long amount of time. So I absolutely love this chart. Now, the only caveat I'm going to add to this chart is this is looking at 4-year, 6-year, 8-year, 10-year, and 12-year CAGRs. It doesn't actually look at Bitcoin's all-time CAGR since inception. Now, again, we're not going to use this yet, not until the end of today's video, but I will give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek behind the curtain, because the maths that you're going to see on this little Excel spreadsheet, I'm going to be using this for a video in the not too distant future. And you can see Michael Saylor, his bear case, his base case, and his bull case for what he expects Bitcoin to do each year over the next 21 years. But let me tell you, Bitcoin's CAGR is actually 195% since inception. If you look at all the 16 years of Bitcoin's history, it's 165%. So let's keep that in mind when we run these assumptions. Before I get stupidly bullish and bull-tarded, we're going to start with, let's call it a 77% CAGR. So let's assume Bitcoin's done what it's done over the past 8 years. These 8 years are Bitcoin's worst years in its history. Why is that? Well, that's because we're looking at 2018, 19, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. That is Bitcoin's worst 8 years. Why do I say that? That's because that time period, it begins in 2018, just after we had that massive 2017 bull run. And how many bull runs have we seen between 2018 and 2025? Let's have a think about it. What have we seen? We saw a lackluster 2020 bull run. I didn't think we really saw a real Bitcoin bull run in 2020. Again, I've explained the reasons for why I don't think that was a real Bitcoin bull run. We only 5x'd in price, really. And that was because China, Elon Musk, World Economic Forum, and BlackRock were all attacking Bitcoin in various forms. Mainly, they were attacking it because of its proof of work energy usage. They were saying this is not an ESG compliant asset. So again, Bitcoin's returned 77% over those past 8 years. Again, we haven't even seen a bull run yet. Bitcoin's just at an all-time high right now. And again, congratulations to the 274 of you guys giving me a second chance on this live stream, which with what I hope is better audio, because right now we are knocking on the door of a new Bitcoin all-time high at the time of this live stream. We're at $109,000. So maybe if we get super bullish, we'll get a new all-time high. But let's jump back on over to this CAGR. We're going to assume a 77% CAGR because that's what Bitcoin has done in its worst time frame over the past 8 years. You can see it's actually 85%. So let's use that. Let's use 85% CAGR. I think this is Bitcoin's worst CAGR over a somewhat decent period of time. So when can you retire? With 0.01 Bitcoin, if you want to be selling on and living on $100,000 a year, if we're assuming the money supply will continue expanding by 12%, and we expect Bitcoin to continue appreciating by 85% per year. When do we moon? You can retire in 2035. I know that sounds crazy, but let's have a look at the maths. This 1% of a Bitcoin will be worth $1.14 million in 2035 if Bitcoin continues compounding at that 85% rate. Again, I think that's incredibly conservative. Your first daily sell will be $950. And you can see very clearly they've run the maths, they've run the numbers, they've got the chart here to back it up. And you can also see how your Bitcoin stack will change over time in regards to the number of Bitcoin. So this chart here is showing that as we start selling in 2036, it will slowly decrease in size. But that's because it's increasing in purchasing power because the price of Bitcoin, hopefully, it's appreciating by 85% per year. Now, again, 2035, guys. Now, a lot of people will say, but hang on a minute, Luke. Robert said 0.01 Bitcoin will be priceless in 2 years. Why is that? It could be due to the second simulation, the slightly more realistic and bullish simulation I want to run with you guys in just a moment. But it could also be due to the fact that maybe Robert is predicting the supply suffocation is going to continue accelerating. That's, again, I'm just reading between the lines here, just speculating, just a little bit. But maybe, just maybe, 0.01 Bitcoin is going to become priceless because nobody wants to sell their Bitcoin. Again, I can hear the tomatoes being thrown at me right now. I get it. A lot of people say, Luke, you need to ignore this chart. You need to stop talking about a supply suffocation. There will always be a seller of Bitcoin. I've heard it all before. Don't get me wrong, I have. But what I will say is that the supply suffocation is accelerating at a breakneck pace. I always tell you guys, I love to show you guys this chart right now. The number of Bitcoin on exchanges decreased by 500,000 in the past 6 months. It's 80,000 coins a day have left the exchanges since October 2024. You can see coins on exchanges were 2.9 million. Right now we are under 2.5 million. I don't know. Maybe this trend is just going to continue for another 2 years. Maybe, just maybe. Maybe that is why 0.01 Bitcoin, again, 1% of a Bitcoin, will become priceless in 2 years. It's really not that far away when we think about it. I think Robert is just predicting we're going to see another bull run, and it is coming. Now let's get a little bit more bullish. Again, let's try to put ourselves in the shoes of Robert. Why does he think it's going to be priceless in 2 years? Let's go back to our retirement calculator. And now with this retirement calculator, I want to have a look at when you can retire with 10% of a Bitcoin. So this is 0.1% of a Bitcoin. Let's plug in some numbers and have a little bit of a play. So now we're going to increase this from 1% to 10%. Let's do the same $100,000 retirement. And again, let's assume the money supply is doing what it's doing. But the one variable I want to change is Bitcoin's appreciation rate. I want to assume Bitcoin simply does what it has done over its past 16 years into the future. And I understand the law of large numbers. I understand the argument for why Bitcoin cannot compound at 195% per year forever. I do agree with that. Bitcoin can't be worth $50 trillion in the year 2060 or whatever it would be. I understand and I agree with that. But I do think that Bitcoin is going to compound at a similar rate to what it's done over the past 16 years for simply a lot longer than most people think. Some people even recently were saying, look, Bitcoin's CAGR has been like 40% over the past 4 years. It's going to get lower and lower and lower and lower. I don't think so. It's just me. So these assumptions are my assumptions, but if Bitcoin continues doing what it's doing over the past 5 years, we can actually see some really interesting numbers here. So let's assume Bitcoin appreciates at 195% per year. Well, that means you could actually retire with 10% of a Bitcoin in 2027, believe it or not. That is true. All the maths is here. In 2027, 10% of a Bitcoin will be worth $375,000. That means the price of Bitcoin will be at 3.75 million. And this means your first daily sell will be $377. It's pretty insane to think about. That is not many years away, my friends. That's literally 2 years away. It's not far at all. And that would literally break all of the models to the upside. So again, this is with 0.1 Bitcoin. This is with 10% of a Bitcoin. This assumes you want to retire 100,000. Why don't we get silly bullish? Let's say you want to ball out and you want to retire with $200,000 a year. You can still retire in 2028. Let's assume you want to go bonkers. Let's assume you want to invite Conor McGregor to your birthday party and you want to sell $500,000 a year. You can still retire in 2029. This here is the power of compound interest. So if Bitcoin simply does what it's done, 195% returns each year for 16 years, if it does this for just another 3 to 4 years, people are going to be absolutely shocked to the upside. And the predictions and the statements that Robert Kiyosaki made literally today on Twitter, they're going to prove to be true. They're going to prove in hindsight to not be as crazy as a lot of people are telling him they are. Because if you do check out the comments in Robert's tweet here, again, this is a real tweet. Shocked when you really think about it. Scroll down. People are saying, hey, those numbers are a little bit crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? But look, I think, again, exponential change surprises everyone. Exponential change is not understood by anyone's brain, especially mine, the non-existent brain. I struggle to understand exponential change, but the everyday person also struggles incredibly much. Okay, it is very difficult to wrap your head around how things get adopted in exponential curves. And again, to anyone doubting this, just think about this for a minute. Really important point I want to make. Bitcoin's gone from $0 to $100,000 in 16 years. But less than 1% of the world has actually adopted Bitcoin. Think about that for a minute. Then think about the fact that 95% of all of the Bitcoin that will ever be in existence have already been mined. I have a chart to show you about that. It's one of my favorite charts. It's not this one that's showing that 900,000 Bitcoin have left the exchanges over the past 12 months. And it's not this one showing you guys that I think the number of whole coiners, these are addresses with one Bitcoin in them, have peaked forever. The chart I wanted to show you had something to do with adoption. Oh, here it is, scarcity. So you can see every 4 years, the number of Bitcoin that's going to get created and distributed onto the network, it is going to halve every single 4 years. Everybody's heard, okay, 21 million Bitcoin have been mined. I get it, cool. But I don't think a lot of people have really sat down to think about things. And they're like, hang on a minute. You're here to tell me 19.8 million of those 21 million have already been mined in 2025? We're literally going to be fighting over the last 1.2 million Bitcoin for the next 115 years. To really give you guys some really wonky numbers, when you zoom in on this chart, you can see that, like, for example, the block reward in 2056 is going to be 0.01 Bitcoin. That's 1% of a Bitcoin. That means in 2056, all of the Bitcoin miners are going to be fighting over 1% of a Bitcoin every 10 minutes. And that's it. That's how much Bitcoin is going to be created for the entire world every 10 minutes. 1% of a Bitcoin, 0.01. I don't think a lot of people have really extrapolated out what happens in a world if even 5% of the world wants to adopt Bitcoin. This is not linear. You cannot extrapolate Bitcoin's price movements from $0 to $100,000 in a linear fashion. Okay, things are going to get interesting. Things are going to get really strange, and I don't think most people are prepared for what Bitcoin could do in the not too distant future. And it's pretty wild that the man who sold tens of millions of books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has now come to the realization that there is Bitcoin and then there is no second best. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see the number of people holding one Bitcoin decrease forever. It's going to happen. Again, like some of you guys might have saw in the live stream that was up earlier, gave you guys a little bit of a sneak peek into a future video that's going to be dropped this week. I've spent the most time on this video. That is what I will say. I spent a ton of time looking at these charts here. And again, you can see something interesting. Addresses with 10,000 Bitcoin peaked forever in 2017. What happened next cycle? Let's think about things for a minute. The addresses holding 10,000 Bitcoin peaked forever in 2017. Then 4 years later, when Bitcoin moved up an order of magnitude, what happened? The number of addresses holding 1,000 Bitcoin peaked forever. What's going to happen this cycle? I'll let you guys do the extrapolations at home. But this here is addresses of 1,000 Bitcoin. You can see peaked forever in 2021. Why do I say peaked forever? Bold claim, I know. Again, scarcity. 95% of the Bitcoin's been mined forever. And I just don't think we're going to see Bitcoin adoption decrease. I think we're going to see more entrants enter the space, which means Bitcoin is going to distribute. It's as simple as that. It really is as simple as that. Bitcoin is going to become more and more sought after. People are going to want Bitcoin in a bigger way. It is only logical. The world is fighting over Bitcoin right now. The entire world is actually fighting over Bitcoin right now. And what I think is super interesting, it's not just your, Robert Kiyosaki's fighting over Bitcoin. It is not just your Michael Saylor's fighting over Bitcoin. The entire world is fighting over Bitcoin. And I think when we run the numbers in our next little hypothetical thought experiment, you can see that the entire world is beginning to fight over Bitcoin because things are changing. I can see a couple of people in the chat here. We're going to run some more. How about we run some more simulations, Midwest Picker, on whether you can retire in your 40s with 10 Bitcoin. You know what? I'm going to do the maths for you. How about that? I tell you guys, I always try to read all the comments in the chat. How about we run the simulation? Let's assume you got 10 Bitcoin. I'm going to show you how soon you can retire. Again, I would encourage you to rewind and watch the beginning of this video, but I think it's very, very possible to retire with 10 Bitcoin, probably now, to be honest. Let's have a look. Back to my calculator. You can see I plugged in 10 Bitcoin. Let's assume you want to ball out, my friend. You want to sell $500,000 a year. That's a hell of a retirement fund. You can retire in 2020. Is that right? 2024? Let's double check the maths. Let's say Bitcoin's going to increase by 80% per year. You're retiring 2025. So this assumes a start date of April 2024. That's how the calculator is programmed. So that means you can retire in 12 months. Maybe that's why the maths looks a little bit wonky. But I'm telling you, 10 Bitcoin, I encourage you to play around with this calculator in your own time. 10 Bitcoin is a lot of Bitcoin. As Moon Shiki in the chat says, if I had 10 Bitcoin, I'd retire yesterday. Me too. I wish I had 10 Bitcoin, but I don't. I made too many mistakes and I was too poor when I first got into Bitcoin. So I also wish I could retire with 10 Bitcoin right now. That would be absolutely beautiful. So I'm sorry, MG, but I disagree. I mean, the maths is there. You can run your own assumptions. I don't think it's, speculative. I've been very straightforward about the fact that we're just extrapolating what's happened in the past into the future. If it repeats, certainly could retire with 0.1. But I think things are going to get even more bullish, and that is because of the developments happening right now. Okay, I genuinely believe we are witnessing a Bitcoin supply suffocation that is about to go nuclear, because literally hours ago, we see another public company, this time backed by Donald Trump, going to buy $3 billion worth of Bitcoin. And this is happening literally 2 weeks before GameStop is about to come out and report what they're holding on their balance sheet in a matter of days. And all of this Bitcoin buying from these massive companies, it's happening when the number of Bitcoin on exchanges is shrinking and it's dropping like an absolute rock. Let's not forget what Jack Mallers and Cantor Fitzgerald announced recently when they came out and announced that they were going to be starting a new Bitcoin treasury company. And guess what? They're buying. Check this out. We can see Jack Mallers, 21 Capital, and Tether buys 4,000 Bitcoin for $458 million. Again, how much Bitcoin is mined every single day, guys? 450. One company just bought 10 times the daily supply in one day. This is one buy, and this isn't a one-off buy. These guys at 21 Capital, they want to be the MicroStrategy competitor. I got another tweet to show you. We can see they want to buy 5% of the total supply. Think about this for a minute. One company wants to buy, and they're very openly saying, we want to buy 10% of the supply. Okay, well, Houston, we've got a problem, because guess what? We have 210 public companies with Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and they're wanting to buy more and more. Again, I'm talking about this topic as well in the same live stream, because this is going to greatly affect when you can and cannot retire on Bitcoin. Okay, let's think about this for a minute. There's 3.37 million Bitcoin held by public companies, private companies, government treasuries, and ETFs. The large majority of these guys, they're very sticky buyers and they're very sticky holders of Bitcoin. They're not like Dave Portnoy. They're not lettuce handing their Bitcoin, selling it, okay? They're holding that thing. They're diamond handed. They're holding their Bitcoin. As Michael Saylor says, forever, for 100 years. That's what Michael has said. And again, let's not forget, he's held true to his word for 5 years so far. A lot of people gave him flack in 2020 when he said that. A lot of people said, don't trust Michael, he'll sell. He's going to trade the Bitcoin cycles. He's a fiat bro. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not so certain. So the case I'm trying to make here is, look, 3.37 million Bitcoin held by these massive entities, Jack Mallers and Cantor Fitzgerald and Tether have openly told you they want to buy how much? 5% of the Bitcoin supply. Guess what? Our friend Michael, friend of the channel, he is already squatting on, as you guys can see, 576,000 Bitcoin. Think about that number for a minute. That is nearly 3% of the Bitcoin supply. And you know what's really interesting about Saylor? He just recently came out and announced he wants to buy another $84 billion of Bitcoin. If the price stays at around $100,000 to $110,000 per coin, that's another 800,000 coins. So let's pause for a minute. Quick math. I get it. Math is hard. You don't need to tell me. I am a little bit of a nerd with numbers, but math is hard. I get it. So let's pause, slow down, think about things. Michael holds 600,000 today. He wants to buy another 800,000 coins. Again, this is most recent $84 billion capital raise. This would put him at 1.4 million Bitcoin. Again, caveat, math is hard. Michael wants 1.4 million Bitcoin. Now we have Jack Mallers, Tether, and Cantor Fitzgerald also saying they want to buy 5% of the Bitcoin supply. That's 1 million coins. So these guys want to be a competitor MicroStrategy. Let's assume they want to have the same strategy as strategy, no pun intended. Let's assume they want to hold those million coins for 100 years. Okay, it's 5% of the supply gone. And now we got Michael. He would be hypothetically sitting on 1.4 million coins. That is 7% of the Bitcoin supply gone. Not moving for 100 years. You guys starting to see what I'm seeing? We have two entities, two public companies who want to sit on 1.2 million Bitcoin. Sorry, that's wrong. 12% of the Bitcoin supply. It would be 2.4 million Bitcoin. 12% of the Bitcoin supply held by two companies. Are you guys starting to see what I'm seeing? I'm feeling the pressure. Thank you. We need somebody fact checking my maths. Guys, I mean, we're not even talking about the biggest holder over here, IBIT, BlackRock squatting on 500,000 Bitcoin themselves. We've seen even through 30 to 40% corrections in the Bitcoin price, IBIT holdings of Bitcoin, they decreased by less than 2 to 3%. Again, that destroyed another huge narrative. As you can see, these are the Bitcoin ETF flows. Check them out. Bitcoin's recently had multiple 20, 30% corrections in price. A lot of people said, a lot of gurus said, BlackRock's going to sell their exit liquidity. So far, they haven't. So far, it looks as if those people buying the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, again, on net, on average, they appear to be long-term holders. Maybe these are people with retirement accounts and they can't buy physical Bitcoin in their retirement accounts. And they're buying a Bitcoin proxy like IBIT, Bitcoin ETF. Again, I think on net, these are the kind of buyers getting into BlackRock. We can see very clearly what happened. We haven't seen any significant outflows. And all of this buying pressure from public companies, it's happening when coins on exchanges are dropping like a rock. Again, right now at today's prices, you guys can see there's about 2.5 million Bitcoin on exchanges. With Bitcoin at 100K, let's call it 100K, it's actually 110. There's only $250 billion worth of demand. And right now we're not even considering all of the nation state FOMO going on. This is just naturally where I'm much bullish than most people. I just expect what's happened since 2020, between 2025, in those 5 years, I just think that's going to happen over the next 5 years. Nothing crazy. And if you just assume what's happened between 2020 and 2025 continues, there's no Bitcoin on exchanges. By 2030, what happens? What happens when Microsoft is now able to take a 10% position in Bitcoin? Because it's at $1 million a coin in 2030, it's big enough, and they can take a 10% stake. Will they be able to buy 50,000 Bitcoin? I can hear you guys. You're screaming at me. But Luke, there will always be a seller of Bitcoin. There will. I might even sell some Bitcoin in 2030. I'm going to take some profits. I've been holding Bitcoin since 2018. I'm going to take some profits. My man, Ben's going to take some profits. Ben, are you going to sell?
I'll sell a tiny bit.
Ben said he'd sell a tiny bit at $1 million a coin in 2030. I get it. There's always going to be a seller. But the maths that I would encourage people to think about is, yeah, even if there's 1 million hodlers taking some profits, selling half a coin, selling a quarter of a coin when Bitcoin's at $1 million in 2030, who is the buyer on the other side of that transaction? And can the number of Bitcoin that all of the hodlers and the OGs sell in 2030, because we do want to take some profits, is that enough Bitcoin to satisfy the demand coming from really big entities who cannot buy Bitcoin today? Purely because the market cap's too small. Bitcoin's a $2 trillion market cap. Microsoft can't buy Bitcoin today. In reality, they can't take a sizable position in Bitcoin. It's as simple as that. And I just firmly believe if you want to be buying Bitcoin in 2030, good luck. Simply good luck. It really is as simple as that. Again, I want to talk about where I think the actual price of Bitcoin goes in 2030. And even the really conservative models available today are telling you we're going to be at 1.5 million in the bubble territory. These are the really conservative models that I think have 12 years of faulty, bearish data between 2008 and 2020, when the big money wasn't involved. I think it's as simple as that, guys. I think this could be funny. I dropped out of school. I wasn't good enough for maths. Maths was hard. True story. I did drop out of university. No, I did drop out of university, but I was studying. I was doing a double major in maths and chemistry. I did that for 2 years. Didn't know if I wanted to be a doctor or an engineer because I'm clueless. I don't know what I want to do in my life. So I got 2 years in. And I thought, hey, this university thing, maybe it's a scam. I started my first business maybe when I was 18. So 2 years into university. Still didn't answer your question though, Mike. I hope that did. Sound up. If you do need help buying Bitcoin, reach out to me. You can find me on Twitter. Please do not. Just be careful. There's a lot of fake Lukes on Twitter. If you need help with anything, reach out. Happy to help. Happy to point you towards the correct place you should be using to buy your Bitcoin, because there are a lot of places that you should not be using to buy your Bitcoin. I get that. I 100% get that. There's a ton of exchanges with altcoins. There's a ton of exchanges with security threats and security holes and loops. You guys probably would have saw what happened with Bybit recently, $1.4 billion hack. Again, do not fall victim to a hack. Trust in an exchange you should not be using. I always encourage you guys to check out Bitcoin-only exchanges. In particular, there's a reason why I partnered with a Bitcoin Well. I think they're the best Bitcoin-only exchange in the whole space. They openly say, we will not hold your Bitcoin for you. You need to learn about self-custody. I love that about the Bitcoin Well. But to help with that, they say, hey, look, if you struggle to take custody of your Bitcoin, you can book a call with specialists over on the Bitcoin Well if you use their Bitcoin Infinity program. So again, you are looking to buy a large amount of Bitcoin. You can use their OTC desk. You can buy Bitcoin. And you can book a call with your very own specialist that's going to walk you through every step of that buying process. Again, I get it. Buying Bitcoin at first, it's not intuitive, especially if you're completely new to it. But the guys at the Bitcoin Well will help you out. So highly recommend you check them out. So again, if anyone needs help buying their Bitcoin in the chat, check them out. There's a link down below with the Bitcoin Well. And again, do not forget, if you buy Bitcoin on the Bitcoin Well, they're going to give you tokens to play the Bitcoin Wishing Well. Again, that's a game I always encourage you guys to check out because it's going to reward you in Bitcoin for buying Bitcoin. I don't think there's any second best. Okay, and again, once you've bought your Bitcoin over on the Bitcoin Well, I always encourage you guys to also back that thing up. Again, it's great to buy Bitcoin, but I don't think you should be watching bullish videos like this unless you have your Bitcoin in self-custody. You have it in your hardware wallet, and that hardware wallet is backed up. That means your Bitcoin 12 or 24 words, it's punched into titanium. Again, you can use Stampseed for any of your Bitcoin backup storage needs. You guys can get 15% off anything you want to buy from Stampseed. You can buy as many plates as you want. I've probably got about 10. You can buy as many plates as you want from Stampseed with the promo code Luke15. That'll get you 15% off anything you want to buy. Because I think I love this. I love the name. If you can't move your Bitcoin, it's not yours. Great comment. If you can't move your Bitcoin, it's not yours, and it is not generational wealth. You cannot retire if you don't have access to your Bitcoin, all right? I would highly encourage, again, I have had discussions with people who have said, hey, look, I have to pay a 30% hit on my retirement account to sell it and then go and rebuy Bitcoin. Should I take that hit? Absolutely, you should. Again, nothing you hear on this YouTube channel ever in any video is financial advice. But look, I've said to people, look, if I was in your position, I would happily pay tens of thousands of dollars in tax to go and buy the Bitcoin now. Because the tax hit that you take or the transaction fee that you take today, it will be minuscule in the difference that you are missing out in by not having Bitcoin in your portfolio today. Again, we've showed you guys, Bitcoin's CAGR, 198% over the past 16 years. 198%. That is Bitcoin's CAGR. I think all of these projections of 20, 30, 40% appreciations each year in the future, I think they're wildly bearish. Just my thoughts. Just my thoughts. I think Bitcoin's going to continue doing what it's going to do. And I think most people are going to be surprised at where Bitcoin ends up in the future. And absolutely, I think you can retire in the Philippines with 0.01 Bitcoin, Midwest picker. Absolutely, you can. If you think that is bullish, we would appreciate an engagement with the algorithm down below. Again, I have some massive interviews coming out this week. British hodl Peter Dunworth. That's right. The most bullish interview of all time. My man Ben over here has been editing this thing for 2 days. Pressure's on, Ben. It's going to be an absolute banger. Highly encourage you guys to subscribe to the channel just so you're notified when that drops. It's going to be big. It's going to be huge. It is the most bullish interview I've ever done in my life. So prepare yourselves. Be ready for when that drops. Again, I am trying to give you guys much better content this year in 2025. I did a ton of live streams last year, over 300 of them on this channel alone. So again, I'd love your thoughts. If you want me to do more live streams or more edited videos that take longer to do, let me know. Come on. Number one rule of Bitcoin, never tell anyone how much Bitcoin you have. Never, ever, ever. And guys, yeah, I'm sorry for the blurry live stream earlier today. I've actually deleted that. I made it private, really trying not to publish subpar content. So I did the live stream again. And with all that said, thank you so much to 770 of you guys on this live stream. I hope it has better video quality. If you've enjoyed this one, I'm going to slap a link up on screen to 2 of my most recent bullish deep dives. somewhere around there. With all that said, thank you so much to everyone who tuned in.